In America today, Christianity is clearly under attack. Why is this so? How did it come to be? Where did the train get off the track?
The Tribune claims that California Assembly Bill 2943 is just about sexual orientation change efforts, commonly known as Pray the Gay Away camps. That is wrong. The bill, California Assembly Bill 2943, is not just about sexual orientation change efforts. Since the Tribune clearly failed to research or perhaps even read the bill, allow me to spell it out. California Assembly Bill 2943 would make it a crime to sell, and I quote here from the language of the bill, goods or services to any consumer that advertise, offer to engage in, or do engage in sexual orientation change efforts with an individual. Well, so what? You might be saying that does sound like Pray the Gay Away camps. Well, the sneaky bill then defines sexual orientation change efforts as, and I quote again from the text of the bill, any practices that seek to change an individual's sexual orientation. This includes efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions or to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of the same sex. So goods and services, yep, books are goods and services, efforts to change behaviors, efforts to eliminate romantic feelings. Yep, the Bible calls us to self-control over our sexual behavior and is quite clear on sex outside of marriage between a man and a woman. So yeah, California Assembly Bill 2943 could lead to the government banning books that teach traditional Christian doctrine on homosexuality. Period. All right, Travis, Snopes wrote this article about our clip from last week. They say this law, the language of this law, does not apply to books. This is the actual quote from Snopes. It says, Lowe's bill does not seek to outlaw all religious or moral instruction regarding sexuality and sexual orientation, nor would it ban the sale or possession of generic religious texts such as the Bible. Travis, is that true?
That is not true according to the bill itself. If you actually read the language of the bill, there is no specific religious exemption. And as we know, with the way that this liberal legislature in California works, if it's not specifically exempted, then it is encompassed. And they might try to say that, oh, no, it's not, but we all know exactly where that path leads. And at issue right here, Liz, is not whether or not you believe that, people can change their genders or not. At issue is our First Amendment rights. Literally, they are trying to say that certain beliefs, certain teachings are fraudulent, and that if you engage in these teachings, you are violating the law. Not only would you potentially be violating the law, any books, services, etc., that would expound those beliefs are also violating the law. And as you mentioned very clearly, the Bible is pretty clear in terms of where the Bible stands. And this could very well be the camel's nose under the tent, where they not only try to strip away our First Amendment rights, but begin to actually get faith out of our everyday lives. And that's what has everyone in the faith community across the churches in California and across this nation so concerned.
Right, and this is where I would call out Snopes, and I would call out the author of the bill as well. I don't know if he neglected to read the text, if he had his staff write it, or if he's simply trying to slide this by. This is not about sexual orientation change efforts. This is about the paragraph in this bill, and I will read it. I will read this paragraph when it defines what goods mean. It says, and I quote, goods means tangible chattels bought or leased for use primarily for personal, family, or household purposes, including certificates or coupons exchangeable for these goods, and including goods that, at the time of the sale or subsequently, are to be so affixed to real property as to become a part of real property, whether or not they are severable from the real property. Basically, anything except real estate. There is no literal interpretation of this bill that would give us any reason to believe that the government wouldn't have the power to ban books. Now, does that mean they're going to walk around and do it? Not necessarily, but they could have the authority to do so under this bill.
And this is exactly the problem. This is always how it starts. It starts someplace that's innocent, where people say, oh, no, this is crazy. There's no way that could ever be construed to mean that. But once that law gets on the books, we have no idea where Jerry Brown and the California Democrats try to take that. I will tell you right now, the law on its face is unconstitutional. It is a direct attack on our First Amendment rights. It is a direct attack on our freedom of religion and our freedom to express our faith.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
Why the stars falling right now? Why are you sitting here all the time? Why eventually everything ends? Why do you act so cold hands? Why the sky is always so bright? Why did you waste another day? Why the end is turned around? Why did you hear this beautiful sound?
Two Christian women are facing jail time in Arizona for being Christian and living their Christian beliefs. These two women could be thrown in jail because they declined to participate in a gay wedding ceremony since gay marriage violates their Christian beliefs. The city of Phoenix says that Christian belief is against the law. That Christian belief is against the law.
And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws.
That Christian belief is against the law. The women's names are Joanna Duca and Brianna Koski, and they own an art studio in Phoenix, a calligraphy studio, where they create custom invitations for events such as weddings. But their names and what they do almost doesn't matter here, because these two women could be any one of us. They could be you, they could be me. They could be any one of the 173 million Christian adults living in our country, in the United States. Christians who are now under attack by the government for living their Christian faith. The law in the city of Phoenix that could send these women to jail is called an anti-discrimination ordinance. And it says business owners can't discriminate against gay people. And that's all good and well, but that's not what's happening with these two women. Nobody is turning gay people away from the store for being gay. A gay man did not walk into the shop and the owner said, "Oh, sorry, sir, you can't buy anything here because we hate your sexual orientation." Not at all. In fact, the owners of the studio say they're happy to serve gay customers and gay customers can buy anything in their store. But it's a very, very different thing for the government to force these women to participate in a gay wedding since gay marriage violates their Christian beliefs. That's what's at stake here. These women use their talents and their skills to create artwork, expression in the form of these invitations, and they don't want to use their artwork to celebrate something that is against their religion. That has nothing to do with discriminating against a gay person for being gay. That's simply the right of these Christians to live their lives according to their Christian morals. It boils down to this: can the government compel speech from these women? Can the government throw these women in jail if they refuse to speak, refuse to participate in something against their religion? Can the government throw these women in jail for being Christian? A judge ruling on this case, Judge Karen Mullins of the Maricopa County Superior Court, said it didn't matter that this Phoenix law compels speech, allows government to force citizens to say things the citizens don't want to say. The judge said this kind of speech doesn't count, it's not protected, because it's not, quote, expressive speech. I'm sorry, have you read the First Amendment? Is there an exception for certain kinds of speech that aren't protected? The answer to that is no. This is the First Amendment, and I quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech." Our Constitution doesn't say no abridging of expressive speech. It says no abridging the freedom of speech. But that's what's happening to these women in Arizona. That's what's happening to these Christian women because they're Christian. And it could happen to the rest of us next, unless we call it out and put a stop to it. The left is going after Christians again after Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced a religious liberty task force to protect the rights of people of faith. But the left is telling us because of this task force, we're headed towards the Handmaid's Tale. The Daily Beast published an article claiming the Religious Liberty Task Force, quote, declares holy war on LGBT people. One commentator on Twitter said, quote, a religious liberty task force, isn't this something the Taliban would do? No. The Taliban stones women to death who've been raped and kills anybody who dares to question the religion of Islam. If you think that's the same thing, please be my guest and go visit the Taliban and then come back and tell me if you still think it's the same. See, here in America, we already have the freedom of religion. The First Amendment in our Constitution guarantees us the right to religious freedom. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The reason we need a religious liberty task force is because of people on the left, people who think their views and their religious decisions are somehow superior to mine. They're trying to force me and Christians like me to violate our religious beliefs to serve theirs. This is not a talking point. We can see this ourselves. We need religious liberty because of you people on the left. You would force us to pay for abortions, which is not only against science, but also against our religious beliefs. You would force us to participate in your religious ceremonies, even though that violates our religious beliefs. Or else, you threaten us that we will lose our businesses. In Colorado, you targeted a Christian cake baker. In New York, you targeted a Christian couple who own a bed and breakfast. In Arizona, you targeted 2 Christian women who run a calligraphy studio. In Oregon, you targeted a Christian florist. This is why we need a religious liberty task force to protect our constitutional right to religious freedom. You people on the left also don't tell the truth. You accuse Christians of hating gay people. Nothing could be further from the truth. You purposely conflate 2 things that are not the same. You say people who oppose gay marriage hate gay people. How is that the same thing? It's not the same at all. In fact, the majority of Christians I know are extremely welcoming and loving and compassionate to gay and transgender people. Every one of those businesses that declined to participate in a gay wedding, they offered the gay people other goods and services. Not one business turned a gay person away because they were gay. Yet you on the left, you mock Christians. You ridicule Vice President Mike Pence for being faithful to his wife in a Christian marriage. You try to disqualify a judge from a federal bench because that judge is a practicing Catholic Christian woman. You are the ones discriminating against religious people. You are why we need this task force to protect our constitutional right to live our lives according to our Christian faith. A high school student was forced to remove all religious references from her graduation speech, and now she's suing the school district because of that. Mariah Bridges was told her remarks could not be religious and that she most certainly may not recite a prayer that excludes other religions. Watch.
I was told that I can't give a prayer tonight, but I have a few closing sentiments for the class of 2017. Today, the true end of our education here at Beaver, let's remember to be thankful for our immeasurable blessings, to have been born in a country where we're granted a quality education as if it were a right.
Joining me now is lead attorney on the case from First Liberty, Jeremy Dice. Jeremy, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, this is quite the story. I mean, this girl, she's a high school senior. Her name's Mariah Bridges, as you know. These are her graduation remarks, and the school claims that if she didn't alter the remarks that she had previously prepared, she would have been breaking the law. My question to you as a lawyer is how?
Well, she would not have been breaking the law. In fact, the Supreme Court has observed, and it's still true today, that students do not shed their constitutional rights when they walk through the schoolhouse gates, and that protection of the First Amendment carries through all the way through to the graduation ceremony here as well. When a student is chosen through neutral criteria, which Mariah was, and given primary control over the remarks, which Mariah had, then the school cannot tell her to remove religious references without violating the Constitution.
Right, so tell me exactly, if you know, which I assume you do, what did they censor? What was she planning to say?
Well, she had chosen to form her remarks in something of the form of a prayer, just to be able to express her best wishes for her colleagues, her classmates, through her Christian identity. And the school district, as you read, didn't like that very much and told her to remove all references to religion effectively. And so the superintendent in this district said that certainly we would like you to provide inspirational comments or words of hope, but those words of hope and inspiration could not be religious in nature. Unfortunately, that violates the law.
Right, it does. I mean, what if her religion, or what if her inspiration and hope comes from her religious beliefs, which clearly it seems that they do. This is a public school, though, right?
It is a public school, and thankfully the United States Department of Education has provided guidance on this very topic. And as I said a moment ago, so long as the student controls primary control over the remarks and has been selected through neutral criteria, it's private speech under the First Amendment, which is fully protected. That's why I would really encourage students across the country to go to firstliberty.org and look up our Know Your Rights toolkit so you know exactly what you can and cannot do regarding your religious expression while on campus.
Right, and particularly because it's a public school, she actually has more rights there because it's taxpayer funded, because it is an entity of our government. This isn't a private school where you would have signed something that you agree or disagree to follow their stated principles or religious beliefs. This is a public school. Her First Amendment reigns supreme here, and it seems that it's violated. Jeremy, did Mariah ever encounter any liberal political opinions from teachers while she was at that school?
You know, I don't know, but I do know that the superintendent released a statement yesterday saying effectively what she had said in the letter in the first place, that they control the speech and all that, but that's not true. And either the superintendent has not read the guidelines issued by the United States Department of Education, or she's simply choosing to ignore them. But they clearly state that Mariah was entitled to be able to provide these religious remarks, private remarks that happen to reference her religious faith while at school. All we would like is an opportunity to sit down with the superintendent and the Board of Education and discuss ways that we can protect student religious expression in the future so this sort of thing doesn't happen ever again.
And is the superintendent willing to sit down with Mariah, sit down with her legal team, you yourself, perhaps Mariah's parents? Is she willing to do that?
Well, certainly Mariah and I and First Liberty Institute are more than happy to do so. And to this date, we've not heard word back to whether or not the superintendent or Beaver Area School District would want to do that. I hope they will.
Right, I hope they will too. The reason that I brought up the political aspect, asked if Mariah had ever heard a teacher stating any liberal beliefs, is because that could be argued that it was also an articulation of their religious beliefs. And I'd like to see, at least, if the school district holds an equal standard for both liberals and conservatives, Christians, or those who don't want Christian values articulated from a graduation stage here. Jeremy, you're suing them right now. There's a lawsuit. Is it just a strictly First Amendment lawsuit?
We haven't filed a lawsuit yet, and I don't think one may be necessary. We've just simply sent them a letter saying, look, here's what the law actually is. Here's what the United States Department of Education has said about this very issue. And then let's sit down and talk about a way that we can protect religious expression of students in the public schools, and particularly in Beaver Area School District, in the future. This sort of thing doesn't need to happen. Students retain their constitutional rights when they go to school, and certainly that includes all the way through the graduation ceremony.
Right, and I guess my last question here, and hopefully it won't get to litigation. Hopefully they'll see the precedent here and know that they're going to lose and not waste the money fighting our Constitution. But what is their defense? They told Mariah that she couldn't exclude other religions, but a Christian prayer or Christian intentions certainly don't exclude anybody. What defense are they giving?
Well, I think you saw it in the letter that the superintendent sent here, that this was somehow the speech of the school and owned by the government there in Pennsylvania, but that's the farthest thing from the truth. The reality is she was asked by the student body president to provide closing remarks. She authored those closing remarks, and once the school found out about them, they required her to remove any religious reference. For a school district and the state behind her to say that a student has to express a very certain viewpoint, one that is sanitized from all religion, that is the very essence of what we call viewpoint discrimination. It's wrong, and more than that, it's illegal under the federal Constitution. Yep,
you're 100% right. It is illegal. It's our First Amendment right. That's why we have protections of speech and of religious practice, because there are people who want to shut us down. In Sweden, the government is forcing preschools to be gender neutral. Yes, it's just as crazy as it sounds. A school ignoring basic biology. Children in Sweden can go to preschool as young as 1 year old. In these government-mandated gender-neutral classrooms for tots, teachers hold training events to indoctrinate toddlers in radical, progressive, anti-science gender theory. Training events. Can you say communist social engineering? Can you say creepy? During these training events, preschool-aged boys are forced to massage each other's feet since the government says that's a stereotypically girlish activity. Preschool-aged girls are forced to walk barefoot in the snow since the government says that's a boyish thing to do and will help build up girls' masculine side. Little boys are put in charge of the play kitchens, and little girls are taught to practice screaming no at the top of their lungs. Keep in mind, this is all in an effort by the government to diminish gender differences. It's social engineering, but it's worse. The students aren't allowed to say boys and girls. They're only allowed to say friends. Does that ring a familiar bell, comrade? They aren't allowed to use gender-specific pronouns like he or she. They're indoctrinated only to use gender-neutral pronouns like hen. If the little girls are too girly and the little boys too boyish, teachers reprimand the parents for, quote, gender mistreatment. I played with Barbies with my sisters all the time when I was a kid. My brother had a plastic toolbox that he loved before he could even walk. Would my parents have been reported to the government for gender mistreatment for this? You have to ask, because in Sweden, I think they would. See, this is part of the progressive agenda. Replace God with government. Tear the family apart by sabotaging marriage. Tear marriage apart by redefining institutions that have existed in our world for thousands of years. Ignore biology. Erase gender. Without gender, how do you have a traditional marriage? You don't. Without marriage, how do you have a strong family unit? You don't. Without a family unit, who are you supposed to rely on? What's the backbone of society? Well, government. Bernie Sanders thinks we should be more like Sweden. He wants to serve us Medicare for all, a government-funded socialized healthcare system run by the same kind of bureaucrats who make little boys touch each other inappropriately to try to make them more like girls. The left wants government to pay for school from start to finish, free college, and guess who controls the curriculum when government pays for all of it? Oh yeah, the government. If you think this gender-neutral mandate, this social engineering, this indoctrination, this abuse won't come here to the United States, think again. Politicians in California already want to throw nurses in jail who accidentally misgender their patients. In the UK, a teacher was fired for referring to his class in an all-girls school as, "Okay, girls, let's get started." There was a student who identified as transgender in his class. The teacher didn't even know it. He was fired anyway. If we are not brave enough to speak up and say, biology is biology, it's not bigotry. Girls are girls and boys are boys, and they are equal, but they are scientifically different, then this is going to happen here in America next.
We have been told by the school that they are going to consider bringing in shorts, but next year, and many of these boys won't even be here next year. So, is that good enough?
No, it's not. It's not good enough. So, I'm not just doing it for myself. I'm doing it for the others as well. But I want shorts this year, and I'm going to keep wearing it until they give us shorts this year.
As a gay rights activist, yes, I'm always going to be fighting for equality with all of my friends and with my
Have you ever met anybody in your age group that is against gay rights? I mean, it seems like something that's going to happen.
Yes,
in real
I
time.
have.
Do you meet young people?
Yes, of course
really?
I have. Well, not my fans, but
right, yeah.
But there's all sorts of people all over the world with so many different views. But most importantly, I think it's about bringing people together, and the performance we did last night at the Grammys was and what we've been doing with the egg and the rebirth. It's meant to signify an artistic statement of birthing a new race, and it's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity that bears no prejudice against anyone. So that's really the statement in itself.
And what we've been doing with the egg and the rebirth, it's meant to signify an artistic statement of birthing a new race, and it's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity that bears no prejudice against anyone. So that's really the statement in itself. And what we've been doing with the egg and the rebirth, it's meant to signify an artistic statement of birthing a new race, and it's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity that bears no prejudice against anyone. Birthing a new race, and it's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity that bears no prejudice against anyone.
This is the world you are graduating into. A new world order for the 21st century.
Interesting shell-like sculpture.
I think this was her plan all along, to have eccentric outfits each time, so now she can just have bubbles and no one knows it's her.
Yes, she's already making a scene on the red carpet. Look over it when you cut to it, for real.
We're effort to get her on the carpet then, right? People are gonna come through on the carpet again, or no? What are we talking?
The serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were opened. They knew that they were naked.
Birthing a new race, and bears no prejudice against anyone.
Anyone can do what they want in life. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you want to be a drag queen and your parents don't let you, you need new parents. Anyone can do what they want in life.
It's meant to signify birthing a new race. It's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity.
This is the world you are graduating in. A new world order for the 21st century.
Science at Tulane University used a recent installment of the network's Lean Forward ad campaign to insist that Americans need to see their children as the property of the government.
We have to have a very collective notion of these are our children. We have to break through our private idea that kids belong to their parents.
And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child. And the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. To devour her child as soon as it was born.
Spiritually sick to the very core of its existence. We have lost all sense of decency. We have been desensitized to evil. We are shaking our collective fist at God. And in the process, we are literally crying out for the wrath of God to fall upon us.
God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually.
prejudice, a race within the race of humanity.
In Sweden, the government is forcing preschools to be gender neutral. Children in Sweden can go to preschool as young as 1 year old. In these government-mandated gender-neutral classrooms for tots, teachers hold training events to indoctrinate toddlers in radical, progressive, anti-science gender theory. Training events. Can you say communist social engineering? Can you say creepy? During these training events, preschool-aged boys are forced to massage each other's feet, since the government says that's a stereotypically girlish activity. Preschool-aged girls are forced to walk barefoot in the snow, since the government says that's a boyish thing to do and will help build up girls' masculine side. Little boys are put in charge of the play kitchens, and little girls are taught to practice screaming no at the top of their lungs. Keep in mind, this is all in an effort by the government to diminish gender differences. It's social engineering, but it's worse. The students aren't allowed to say boys and girls. They're only allowed to say friends. Does that ring a familiar bell, comrade? They aren't allowed to use gender-specific pronouns like he or she. They're indoctrinated only to use gender-neutral pronouns like hen. If the little girls are too girly and the little boys too boyish, teachers reprimand the parents for, quote, gender mistreatment. If you think this gender-neutral mandate, this social engineering, this indoctrination, this abuse won't come here to the United States, think again. Think again. Think again.
It's meant to signify a statement of birthing a new race, and it's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity that bears no prejudice against anyone.
If you think this gender-neutral mandate, this social engineering, this indoctrination, this abuse won't come here to the United States, think again.
Having a baby used to be a straightforward proposition. You could have a boy or you could have a girl. But now there's a third option. It's called steep civilizational decline. A handful of parents across America are deliberately keeping their children's sex hidden and instead raising so-called babies. The idea is that only the children themselves should be able to decide whether they are boys or girls, without any of that pesky biological reality getting in the way. It's all very confusing, like a lot of 2018 is. So, of course, we called in our interpreter of all things progressive, our liberal Sherpa, Kathy Aru, founding publisher of Catalina Magazine. She joins us tonight. So, Kathy, goes without saying you're for this, of course.
Yep.
But doesn't this mean if you're going to raise a baby, how would you be able to change your child's diaper? Because the second you change the diaper, of course, you'd no longer be able to pretend that there was a question about whether this was a boy or a girl. You would know.
Well, it's not about pretending. The parent definitely knows the gender. It's about not necessarily labeling the baby. It's about allowing the baby to decide what gender that baby wants to be when that baby can decide, which is around 4 years old. So from 0 to 4, the baby will not be labeled. The labeling theory will not apply from 0 to 4 years old. The baby will be a baby, neither a boy nor a girl. Whatever gender that baby chooses to be.
What other profound life decisions do we think people ought to be making at the age of 4? Are there any others?
Well,
whether to get a tattoo, whether to get married, enlisting in the military, voting, drinking vodka, smoking Marlboro Reds. Is there anything else that we think 4-year-olds are ready to decide?
This isn't actually a profound life decision. I mean, biologically, there's nothing really going on from 0 to 4 in that area that affects a person's life. Biologically, the experts say that boys and girls, all genders are alike. The boy's brain, the male brain might be a little larger. The female's language might be a little bit more advanced.
Okay. No
maybe,
sexism on my show. Hold on. Whoa, slow down. No, here you're out there like
they say maybe
boys'
those
brains are
true.
larger. And I just want to say that kind of toxic masculinity has no place on this program.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
But that's all they can think of.
The bottom line is, all they can think of, like difference in brain size, difference in genitalia, difference in bone structure, just minor things like minor things like that. Not perhaps, like factually. So those are not minor things; those are definitive things.
Minor.
So, like, why would you not tell your kids about that? At some point they're going to drop trout and look down and say, "Wait, we look different. And you're going to be like, no, you don't. You're exactly the same.
And
that's lying, isn't it?
That's when the child, they say, is around 4 years old. So around 0 to 4, we're not going to say to a little female, a girl that you're a little princess, or boy, you're such a tiger. The labels are gone. You're not going to put that outside influence on a child. You're just going to be neutral. Everything's going to be neutral.
The outside influence
equal.
of biological reality.
Not
so would you do this with anything
perception.
else? But could we decide that we're not going to acknowledge temperature or weather or traffic? And you could just say, you know what? I don't think it's raining outside. Or you can decide whether it's raining outside. I mean, the weatherman says it is, that there's snow on the ground. Or the weather, you know what I mean? The weatherman says that it's 15 degrees out. But I'm going to, you know what I mean? Just kind of make up my own reality.
The parents who are really leading this
we acknowledge
movement,
biology and nature as real, right?
But the biology, the parents who came out with this, who came out in the New York Times and started this baby awareness, this gender-neutral awareness for babies, basically said, why should people be so obsessed if your baby is going to be a boy or a girl? Who cares about that area? It's actually a little human. We are bringing a little human into the world. Who cares about the genitalia? Who cares?
May I just suggest why? And this isn't just my opinion, but the opinion of every person who's ever lived going back, let's just say 10,000 years for the sake of neatness. Because men and women are completely different in key ways.
Babies?
Can we not say that anymore?
Babies are different. Babies aren't different. They're little
they are.
human beings, and there's really not much of a difference between different genders. No. There is no difference. And men and women, we would say, are equal.
I'm trying to laugh so I don't cry.
In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them. Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Social engineering, this indoctrination, this abuse won't come here to the United States, think again.
There is no difference, and men and women, we would say, are equal.
I'm trying to laugh so I don't cry.
There's nothing I can do. Someone grabbed my arm, maybe it was you. Why you running here, my boy? Take you to your home.
A new world order for the 21st century.
It's meant to signify a statement of birthing a new race, and it's a race with no prejudice, a race within the race of humanity.
Why you're running here, my boy? Come, I will take you to your home. Brave, take your fangs and follow me. I cannot follow something I can see. Sing, I will sing for you instead. This song is the only thing that can be dead. Rain, I can feel it on my skin. The drops are falling slowly to my chin. And now I open up my eyes. The dream is changing and I'm not surprised.
Our nation is spiritually sick to the very core of its existence. We have lost all sense of decency. We have been desensitized to evil. We are shaking our collective fist at God. And in the process, we are literally crying out for the wrath of God to fall upon us.
Take your fangs and follow me. I cannot follow something I can sing for you instead. The song is the only thing that can be dead. Sing, I will sing for you instead. The song is the only thing that can be dead. Rain, I can feel it on my skin. The drops are falling slowly to my chin.